You can't cage a free spirit, she said, calling marriage a social construct designed to trap women. So I gave her the freedom she wanted. Turns out, independence isn't so fun when no one pays the bills. So my girlfriend Allison and I have been together for 2.5 years, living together for the past 18 months. Our lease is up next month and I told her I'm not renewing it. She's been spiraling ever since, and I don't know if I'm the asshole here or if this is just reality hitting her. Allison has always been super vocal about not wanting traditional relationship bullshit. She calls marriage a social construct designed to trap women and says commitment is just another word for cage. Cool, whatever works for her. I never pushed marriage or anything serious because honestly I was fine with keeping things casual too. She's fun and we have good chemistry, but here's where it gets weird. Despite all her talk about freedom and independence, Allison has never really taken care of herself. Like, she works part-time at a yoga studio, maybe 15 hours a week, and does some Instagram wellness coaching thing. When we moved in together, I was paying probably 80% of everything. She said it was temporary until her business took off, but that was 18 months ago. A few months back, I started thinking about the future. I'm 29, have a good job in tech, and I want to buy a house, maybe start building something real. I brought up the idea of us getting more serious, not necessarily marriage right away, but at least talking about long-term goals, maybe her contributing more financially so we could save together. That's when she lost it. Here's basically how that conversation went her. Oh my God, here we go. You're trying to change me into some suburban housewife stereotype. Me? I'm not trying to change you. I'm asking if you want to build something together. Her. Build what? A cage. Because that's what this is. You want to trap me in some boring, soul-crushing life just because you're getting old and desperate. Me? Desperate. I'm talking about basic partnership, her. No, you're talking about control. I need to follow my spiritual path, and I can't be contained by societal expectations about what relationships should look like. Me? Okay, but even spiritual people have to pay rent, her. There it is. You're trying to drag me down to your level, make everything about money when love should be enough. You can't cage a free spirit, and that's exactly what you're trying to do. The word cage came up like 6 more times in that conversation. Apparently wanting your girlfriend to contribute financially is the same as imprisoning her. Fine. I heard her loud and clear. If commitment is a cage and she doesn't want to build anything together, then we shouldn't be living together like we're building something together, right? Makes perfect sense to me. So when our landlord asked about renewing the lease, I told him no. I found a smaller place for just me. Gave Allison 2 months' notice, which is more than the lease requires, and told her she'll need to figure out her own living situation since she values her independence so much. You'd think someone who calls commitment a cage would be thrilled about this, right? Wrong. She's been having complete meltdowns for 3 weeks now. Crying, yelling, asking how I could abandon her like this. Keeps saying she thought we were building something beautiful together. The same woman who told me she wouldn't be caged by my expectations literally 6 weeks ago. The cognitive dissonance is insane. She wants all the benefits of a committed relationship, but none of the actual commitment part. Yesterday she asked if we could just stay roommates and split the rent 50-50 on a new place. I asked her how she'd pay her half since she makes about $400 a month total. She said she'd figure it out, and I was being financially controlling by bringing up math. Apparently basic arithmetic is now a form of abuse. I'm moving out in 2 weeks. She keeps alternating between calling me heartless and begging me to reconsider. Her latest strategy is telling everyone that I'm kicking her out and making me look like the bad guy. This whole thing has me questioning everything. Like, did I miss something? Is there a way to have a relationship with someone who wants all the benefits but none of the responsibility? Because right now it feels like she just wanted a dad, not a boyfriend. Edit. A few people are asking about her family. Her parents are pretty well off, but they've been pushing her to get serious about life for years. She's been avoiding them lately because they keep asking when she's going to get a real job. I think part of why she moved in with me was to avoid moving back home. For everyone asking why I stayed this long, honestly, it was comfortable. She's fun when she's not being dramatic, and I guess I thought she'd eventually grow up. Classic mistake, I know. Update 1. Posted 2 weeks ago first, thanks to everyone who responded to my original post. Reading all your comments made me realize I wasn't crazy. So here's what happened after my last post. I thought giving her 2 months' notice was generous, but apparently Allison had convinced herself I was bluffing. She kept acting like nothing was changing, even started talking about our plans for next month like we weren't splitting up. When I started packing boxes last weekend, reality finally hit her. That's when the real manipulation began. Suddenly, she was the perfect girlfriend. Made me breakfast every morning, wanted to have deep conversations about our relationship, kept telling me how much she loved me and couldn't live without me. She even cleaned the apartment, which was shocking since getting her to do dishes was usually like pulling teeth. She kept saying things like, "I know I haven't been the best partner, but I'm ready to change. And I realize now that I was scared of how much I love you." For about 2 days, I almost bought it. She seemed genuinely remorseful and like maybe she was finally ready to be an adult. But then I found out she'd applied for exactly 0 apartments or figure out her living situation. When I asked about it, she said she was focusing on fixing us first because that was more important than logistics. Translation: she was hoping the love bombing would work and she wouldn't have to actually deal with reality. When the girlfriend act didn't work, she pivoted to her spiritual bullshit. Suddenly, our relationship was divinely guided, and breaking up would be going against the universe's plan for us. She started leaving crystals around the apartment and burning sage constantly. She told me she'd had a vision during meditation that we were twin flames, meant to help each other grow, and that my wanting to leave was just my ego resisting spiritual evolution. The best part was when she told me that her tarot cards said we were supposed to stay together and work through this. I asked if the cards mentioned anything about her getting a job, and she said I was mocking her spiritual practice and being energetically violent. When the spiritual angle failed, she went nuclear on social media, posted this long Instagram story about how toxic masculinity was destroying our relationship and how I was trying to control her divine feminine energy. Made it sound like I was some abusive monster demanding she become a tradwife, instead of just asking her to pay her own rent. Her wellness coach friends all started commenting support, telling her she was too pure for this world, and that I obviously couldn't handle a woman who knew her worth. None of them mentioned that knowing your worth typically involves being able to pay for your own food. This is where it got really ugly. She called my mom crying, telling her I was abandoning her and asking my family to intervene. She made it sound like we were basically married and I was just randomly kicking her out for no reason. My mom called me confused as hell, asking what was going on. When I explained the situation, there was this long pause before she said, "So, she doesn't want to commit to you, but she wants you to commit to supporting her indefinitely." Did I understand that right? Allison also reached out to my sister on Facebook, asking her to talk sense into me, because I was throwing away something beautiful over money. My sister sent me screenshots of the conversation. Allison basically admitted she couldn't afford to live without me but claimed that was irrelevant because love should be enough. The final straw came 3 days ago. I was at work and came home to find she'd invited 2 of her friends over to stage what I can only describe as an intervention. They'd prepared a whole presentation about how I was manifesting scarcity mindset and choosing fear over love. One of them literally suggested that I was intimidated by Allison's spiritual power, and that's why I wanted to control her with financial expectations. The other one told me that evolved men don't care about money and that my focus on bills and rent was very third-dimensional thinking. I listened to this bullshit for about 10 minutes before I asked them all to leave. Allison started crying, saying I was being cruel and closed-minded, and that I was rejecting not just her but her entire community. That's when it clicked for me. This isn't about commitment or freedom or spiritual evolution. She's built this whole identity around being a free spirit who's above mundane concerns like rent and groceries. But the only way that identity works is if someone else, me, handles all the mundane shit for her. She doesn't want a partner. She wants a patron. Someone to fund her lifestyle while she plays enlightened guru on Instagram. And when I stopped being willing to play that role, suddenly I became the villain in her story. I'm moving out this weekend. She's been alternating between begging and raging for the past 3 days. Yesterday she told me she never really loved me anyway and was just settling because I was safe and boring. Today she's back to crying and asking how I can destroy what we built together. The thing is, we didn't build anything together. I built a life that happened to include her, while she built an Instagram brand that happened to include me as an unpaid sponsor. I'm done setting myself on fire to keep someone warm who won't even acknowledge that fire is hot. Edit. A bunch of people are asking what she's going to do for housing. As of today, she still hasn't applied for any apartments or reached out to potential roommates. She keeps insisting this is all going to work out because the universe will provide. I guess we'll see how that goes. Update 2. Posted 1 week ago. Jesus Christ, you guys. This week has been absolutely unhinged. I thought I'd seen the worst of Allison's manipulation tactics, but apparently she was just getting warmed up. I'm writing this from my new apartment because I moved out yesterday. So picking up from where I left off, I'd given Allison multiple reality checks. She tried every manipulation tactic in the book, and she still hadn't made any concrete plans for after I moved out. With 1 week left on our lease, I figured she'd finally start taking action. I was wrong. Last Monday, Allison pulled what I can only describe as her nuclear option. She called her parents. Now I'd only met them a few times and they always seemed nice but concerned about her lack of direction. Turns out, she'd been telling them our entire relationship that I was supporting her dreams and we were building something together. Her dad called me Tuesday morning. He was polite but clearly confused, asking if there was anything he could do to help us work things out. I explained the situation as diplomatically as possible, that Allison and I wanted different things. She valued her independence, and I respected that enough to give her complete freedom to pursue her own path. There was this long pause before he said, "Independence. Is that what she's calling it?" Then he told me that they'd been supporting her financially for years before she moved in with me, and they'd assumed that arrangement had ended because she'd finally found stability with me. Turns out, her parents had been sending her $500 a month this entire time, which she'd never mentioned. So she was getting money from them and having me pay for everything. When I mentioned this to her later, she said it wasn't really income because it was family money, and besides, she deserved support while building her spiritual business. By Wednesday, Allison had mobilized her entire wellness coach network. I started getting messages from random Instagram accounts telling me I was making a huge mistake and that Allison was one of the most pure souls they'd ever met. A few of them offered to educate me about spiritual partnerships and how evolved relationships work. One woman sent me a 20-minute voice message explaining how my attachment to material security was blocking my heart chakra and preventing me from experiencing true love. The funniest part was when one of her spiritual mentors offered to do a healing session for our relationship. For only $200, she could clear the energetic blocks that were causing our problems. I declined, which apparently made me resistant to growth and healing. Allison was eating this up, posting constantly about how her soul tribe was supporting her through this spiritual attack from someone who couldn't match her vibration. She was positioning herself as some kind of martyr, being persecuted for her enlightenment. Thursday was when everything fell apart. I was packing my last boxes when Allison's phone rang. It was her landlord from before we moved in together. Apparently, she'd never paid the final month's rent when she moved out to live with me, and it had been sent to collections. He was calling because the collection agency had finally tracked her down. She owed $1,400 plus fees, and they were threatening to sue. She'd been hiding this debt for over a year, letting it pile up while I paid for everything, and she spent her parents' money on crystals and wellness courses. When she hung up, I asked her about it. That's when she completely lost it. Started screaming about how unfair it was that she had to worry about low vibrational things like debt when she was trying to raise the consciousness of humanity. Said it wasn't her fault that society was built around money instead of love. I pointed out that debt is what happens when you take things without paying for them, and that had nothing to do with consciousness or vibration. She threw a freaking crystal at me, a rose quartz, which would be ironic if it wasn't so insane. Friday was my last day in the apartment, and Allison pulled out her final card. She claimed to be pregnant. Said she just found out and we needed to table everything until we figured out what to do about the baby. I asked to see the test. She said she'd thrown it away because she was in shock. I offered to go buy another test so we could confirm. She said that would be traumatic for her and I was being insensitive to her emotional state. Here's the thing, we haven't slept with each other in 3 weeks, not since this whole drama started. When I pointed that out, she said it must have happened before then and she was just now showing symptoms. I told her I'd be happy to support her through a pregnancy, but we should probably confirm it with a doctor before making any major decisions. She started crying and saying I didn't believe her and that my lack of trust was destroying our relationship. By Saturday morning, she dropped the pregnancy thing entirely and was back to begging me not to leave. Yesterday was the actual move. I hired movers and got my stuff out while Allison sat on the couch crying and live-streaming herself on Instagram, talking about how she was experiencing a spiritual death and rebirth as I loaded boxes into the truck. Her followers were eating it up, sending hearts and supportive comments about how she was releasing what no longer served her and making space for her true soulmate. The cognitive dissonance was incredible. She was simultaneously devastated that I was leaving and pretending it was her choice to let me go. When the movers left with my furniture, the apartment looked completely different. Turns out, almost everything had been mine. The couch, the TV, the dining table, most of the kitchen stuff, even the decent bed. She was left with basically a yoga mat, some pillows on the floor, and about 50 crystals. That's when reality really hit her. She called her parents crying, and I could hear her dad on speakerphone asking where she was planning to live. She kept saying she didn't know, and he was getting more frustrated, asking why she hadn't figured this out weeks ago. The call ended with him telling her she could come home, but she'd have to follow their rules, no more spiritual business, time to get a real job and start acting like an adult. She hung up on him. As I was doing my final walkthrough, she suddenly grabbed my arm. "Wait, please, don't do this," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'll do anything. I'll get a real job, I'll pay half the rent. We can even talk about marriage if that's what you want." I gently pulled my arm free. "Allison, I don't want someone who needs the threat of homelessness to finally consider contributing to a relationship. Partnership should be something you want, not something you'd only do to avoid consequences." Her face crumpled. "You're heartless. You're abandoning me in my darkest hour when I need you most." I looked at her sitting there surrounded by crystals and yoga props, the same setup she'd used to justify not working for 2 years. "Remember 3 months ago when you told me commitment was a cage, that you wouldn't let me trap you in some boring life? You said you needed to follow your spiritual path and couldn't be contained by expectations." She stared at me, mascara running down her cheeks. "I'm not abandoning you," I continued. "I'm giving you exactly what you asked for, complete freedom from any cages or expectations. You should be happy." "That's not, I didn't mean," she stammered. "You did mean it, and that's okay. We just want different things." I told her to call if she had a real emergency, but otherwise we were done. She was still crying on her yoga mat surrounded by crystals when I closed the door for the last time. I'm writing this from my new place. It's smaller and costs more than half of what I was paying for our old place, but it's mine. I feel this incredible sense of relief, like I've been holding my breath for months and can finally exhale. Edit. For everyone asking what happened to her, as far as I know, she moved back in with her parents yesterday. Her Instagram has been radio silent since then, which is the longest she's gone without posting in the entire time I've known her. Final update, posted 3 days ago. Hey Reddit. I know a lot of you have been asking for updates, so here's what I hope will be the final chapter of this saga. It's been about 2 weeks since I moved out, and honestly, I feel like a completely different person. First off, living alone is amazing. I forgot what it was like to come home to a clean apartment that stayed clean. No crystals everywhere, no sage burning constantly, no one telling me that my need for organization was blocking my creative flow. I can watch TV without someone explaining how the shows I like are low vibrational. I can eat food I bought without wondering if it'll be there when I get home. The financial relief is incredible too. I'm actually saving money even though my rent is higher. No more surprise charges on my credit card for her essential oils or spiritual courses. Last weekend, I was at a coffee shop near my old neighborhood when I saw Allison with some guy I didn't recognize. They were sitting close together, and she was doing her whole wounded spiritual goddess routine, the same one she'd used on me when we first met. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could see her wiping away tears while he looked concerned and protective. She was wearing this flowy white dress that screamed, "I'm too pure for this cruel world," and he was eating it up. Poor bastard had no idea what he was walking into. Later that day, her Instagram was back in full force. Posted a picture of a sunset with some quote about how the universe always provides exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. Then another post about divine timing and how, when you release what no longer serves you, you make space for your true blessings. The comments were full of her wellness friends congratulating her on calling in her soulmate and manifesting true love. No mention of the fact that she'd been sobbing over me literally 2 weeks earlier, begging me not to leave. I found out through mutual friends that her parents cut her off financially after she moved back home. Apparently, her dad gave her an ultimatum: get a real job within 30 days or find somewhere else to live. She lasted exactly 5 days before moving in with the new guy. Her mom reached out to me on Facebook, apologizing for enabling Allison's behavior and saying they should have forced her to grow up years ago. She said they'd been hoping that our relationship would help her mature, but they realized they'd just been pushing their responsibility onto me. It was actually a really nice conversation. Her mom seems like a good person who got manipulated by her daughter's victim mentality. She told me that Allison had been calling them crying, saying I'd stolen 2 years of her life and left her with nothing. When they pointed out that she'd never contributed financially and had actually been supported the entire time, she accused them of taking my side against their own daughter. They're done enabling her, which honestly gives me hope that she'll eventually be forced to grow up. But it'll probably take a few more relationships ending the same way. I'm dating again, and it's amazing how different it feels when someone actually wants to build something with you instead of just taking from you. Had coffee with a woman last week who insisted on paying for her own drink, and it was the sexiest thing I'd experienced in years. Not because of the money, but because it showed she saw me as an equal instead of a resource. Thanks again to everyone who helped me see clearly when I was drowning in gaslighting. You guys are the real ones. Peace out, Reddit. Time to go live my actual life. Edit. For everyone asking if I feel bad for the new guy, honestly, yes. But I also know that trying to warn him would just make me look like the crazy ex and give Allison ammunition to paint me as someone who can't let go. He'll figure it out on his own, just like I did.